things I think we are going to have time for discussion too, so keep that in mind. But my name is Lindsay Jennis. I work for the Nebraska Department of Economic Development. Our state agency, we're based out of Lincoln, although I have a home office in Bloomfield, which is about a population of 1,000. Just a little bit of background as far as I worked as city administrator in my small community for 7 years, and so I worked with the library there. So I understand, at least in terms of libraries of that size, you limited resources and that time factor. And Allie did a great job on the Zoom. I thought that was excellent as far as framing that, because I know you're pulled so many different directions. And so I don't want you to take this conversation today as, oh my gosh, I have one more thing to do, because it was hard enough to get here today, right? To spend the time to be here today. And so want to thank you for investing in your professional development and also ultimately in what we're seeing as the development of your communities as well. So kind of try to, I guess when I talk about economic development, maybe we can frame that a little bit, but I mean, as far as, do you feel like you have a pretty good concept of what you feel like economic development is and how you look at it? How many of you feel like you're involved in economic development some way in your communities, just by a quick show of hands? And maybe it's a very, well, right, and sometimes maybe it's a very formal role, or maybe sometimes it's a little bit more informal. And so it can definitely look like that. But in the context of how libraries can get involved with economic development, this is a big topic, and we've been having this discussion here for a couple of months, and it's hard to kind of get your arms wrapped around that. So I want to give you some tools, but just to kind of frame it a little bit, I think it depends on who you ask what we mean by economic development. As far as at the state level, for our purposes, with the Department of Economic Development, or DED, it's a process that basically we're looking for measurable creation and growth of jobs, of businesses, of communities. And at the state level, we're primarily focusing on what some of those primary industries are. So that often means manufacturing, data centers, distribution, technology. There's a long list of qualifying businesses under the Nebraska Advantage Act, and that's kind of what, as far as a business development consultant and what I do when I'm working with businesses, a lot of times that's one of the places we start. Now, if you're in a very rural community, or maybe even, and Allie talked about that being relative, but you're thinking, well, we don't have a lot of that in our community. So I understand at the local level, economic development can mean a very different thing, and so that's why we're having that conversation, and just know that maybe what we're doing is a little bit different, but we understand it's all tied together, and it's important. Those service and retail related businesses and how you can support some of that, and what's happening on your main street is important as well. So when we're looking at, as far as what's important when companies are looking to locate here in Nebraska or doing business in Nebraska, a lot of times they're looking for, that transportation, access to markets, labor quality and availability, and then where I think you really come into play, part of it is that labor quality and availability, but a lot of that stems from quality of life, and certainly the buildings, sites, incentives, that all is important too. So when we're marketing Nebraska, as far as some of the high points for us, I think that quality of life piece, I mean, we're all here and we understand it's great, but so trying to convey that to companies, knowing that their workers are really going to enjoy working here. Quality of place, that's very important for what you're doing. Low cost of living, and then labor quality, I think we can all agree Nebraska is known for strong work ethic. Quality education, and just that central location. Basically, we say that we're centrally located enough that we can get pretty much anywhere in the lower 48. You can get your products or whatever you need to ship within 2 days. And so that central location is important. So as far as how our agency is structured, we've got a few different divisions. We've got a business development division. I work in that division. And then we've got a housing and community development division, and then we've got research folks and all sorts of different departments. But as far as on the business development side, or kind of what we call involved in that, the economic development piece more than the community development piece, we've got field service staff. I'm one of those that works, I work in 16 counties here in Northeast Nebraska. So if you're in Cass, Dodge, Douglas, Sarpy, or Washington counties, actually Deb Eggleston on our team, she's my counterpart there. So just know, happy to make that connection, help you make that connection if you are in one of those counties. But otherwise, 16 counties here in Northeast Nebraska, just kind of where, as far as the areas that you cover, I cover most of those. And so our field service staff across the state, certainly we're working with companies that are looking at building and expanding. We call on a lot of businesses with local economic development partners, and sometimes just to visit with businesses on our own. But I guess we're also maybe serve as a means of referral. So if you're just thinking, okay, I want to know more about this program on the housing and community development side, we do that. And then we've got a business recruitment team that works in Lincoln, and they're probably what you hear, the big headlines as far as, okay, Facebook is coming to Nebraska, those kinds of things. So those are the types of things that they're working on. We've got people who work on innovation, which libraries at the very grassroots level you're involved with of helping support some of those innovation efforts. I would imagine that some of the folks that are funded by some of those innovation dollars or some of the seed capital that our department works with, some of those folks spent plenty of time in libraries trying to kind of help figure out in that concept development and utilizing some of those resources that you have. We've got an international team, pretty self-explanatory, but they're helping companies with exports and then also working with companies internationally that maybe want to set up a location here in Nebraska. And that talent piece. So talent, I think, is you're very much an integral part of talent development in our state, both for what our people need to know as far as to be part of a good workforce, but also that quality of life as far as making this a great place to live. People pick communities to live in, and certainly a library that provides the services that they need, that's huge. And so, yeah, I mean, we can all say we're part of that quality of life, but I want you to know how important that piece is, because workforce is growing on that list. When site selectors or businesses are looking at our state, that talent piece is rising to the top. That quality of life piece is rising to the top because our workforce is changing. Different things are important to our workforce. And so it's maybe getting to be more about, they're looking at the sites, they're looking at the buildings that we have, they're looking at what we're offering for incentives. But a big part of that overall package, a growing part of that overall package, is that quality of life piece. And so appreciate what you're doing to enhance that in your communities. So more as far as on the, you play into all that business development, but then that housing and community development. So how can the state government better support you in what you're trying to do? I was talking with Marilyn earlier and how we were talking about housing. Well, housing, I know enough about housing to be dangerous, but I will tell you we have a housing department that, I won't go into all the programs, but just know that we do work to develop homes, affordable homes that people can live in, so that's part of that growing structure of your community too. People need a place to live so that they can use your facilities, obviously. Homes are where jobs live. And so it's an important part of how all that pieces together. The community development side too, and I think we'll back up, I guess, a little bit. You know, I talked about how important you are in that quality of life part, but companies aren't necessarily just choosing Nebraska to do business. And this is something that I heard our directors say just this past week, and the governor said it. It was a big theme of the governor's economic development summit this past week, was that conversation of communities aren't necessarily, or businesses aren't necessarily picking Nebraska to do business, they're picking individual communities. And so you're part of that personality of your community and that representation of your community. So that's a big thing. So as far as programs go, and I've kind of outlined them here, but a lot of you have probably heard of community development block grants or Cdbg. There's a lot of different types of community development block grant. And so I did kind of star one or put an asterisk by the one that I think, as far as if you're looking to make structural improvements to your library in some way, either a new library, sometimes that community development block grant can play into it. That is geared towards generally serving low to moderate income persons, and so there are different stipulations that go along with those federal dollars. There's also some other ways that you can meet that national objective to qualify, but just know that that's out there. Civic and Community Center Financing Fund, if that's something that rings a bell to you, but libraries can sometimes utilize that as well. And I'm not going to go into all the pieces of that, but and then there's the Community Development Assistance Act as well. That's tax credits that can be used for community betterment to kind of incentivize donors to donate to a community project. And so those are probably the things that most fit into what you maybe would be doing. So those are probably more long-term strategies. And I think we're going to talk some of it a little bit about nuts and bolts. You've got some handouts here that we've worked on. And then just kind of planning as far as, because we want to help you kind of get one of those, so those, your time is limited, like Ali said here on the Zoom. So what are some of those quick wins that we can help you implement as well? So I think I'll kind of wrap it up with that, but we'll kind of, I think we'll have time for questions later, or kind of a conversation. So I think, I don't know who you were thinking go next. What makes the most sense?
I can entertain.
My name is Tina Walker. I'm a library director in Fremont at Key Memorial Library. When Eric asked me about this, I thought it would be a wonderful opportunity. We were talking before about our local GFDC, Gary Clark. I work with him all the time. A lot of the questions I was reading, Eric asked about why do we care as librarians about this information. This is why I have a budget, because I was able to, when we first started, I have a library degree, but I also have a business degree. And I also used to teach marketing and advertising. So I look at the library differently than a lot of people do. And I knew the minute I came in that our library needed to be the community hub. It needed to be the center of our community, and we needed to make every single aspect of the community realize that we were important. And so I started meeting with GFDC and the other businesses in town. I was just sitting here, I just kind of curious off the top of my head how many groups or organizations I could list real fast that we've been partnering with. This is in the last 6 months. Small Business Association, All Entrepreneurs, Individuals, Corporations, Housing Development Agency, Habitat for Humanity, Lifehouse, the Homeless Shelter, Developments, GFDC, the Chamber, all the service organizations, Kiwanis, Cosmopolitan, Rotary, Lions Club, you name it. We've been there, talked to them, and presented to them. Community hub of the library is the community assistance plan, and then strong community groups. So one of the groups that I joined is the diversity and inclusion group that just got created in Fremont. I'm sure you all understand why that group was created. And they were looking for people in the community who are forward thinking, innovating, and they feel that all members of the community should be included. So our perspective on life is different than some folks, but we fit in really well with the economic development people because they're thinking the same way we do. So join those groups, get out and join those extra groups. I'm here to answer questions about what I've been doing. If you have questions, you can ask and I'll answer. These guys are presenting more of what their projects are that they're working on. But I am doing everything she's talking about, and I meet and greet. I go out and present at every group and activity I can find. I went to the new Fremont Members Club, and it's a bunch of ladies over the age of 80 that invite you out for tea and coffee, and you go play cards. I've been out to the senior center to play pinochle. I've been to the Cosmopolitan Club. They still have a room that smells like smoke. It's very interesting. and I have to tell you that I came to Fremont, Nebraska because of the immigration ordinance, and my family's like already nuts. But I came there to make things better. And I knew as a librarian who was a strong librarian who could make yourself the center of the community, I could help change the community for the better. So it's very hard, but I'm doing it every day, and these guys are helping us. So we all have the right mindset for this, and as they talk about what they have available for you and the opportunities and the activities, I recommend that you look into something and try it. I believe if you don't fail, you don't learn anything. So we just go out there and try everything we can. Whatever sticks to the wall, we just keep moving with it. And when it doesn't, we let it fall to the floor and we sweep it up. So.
You are singing my tune. Hi, I'm Marilyn Schlake. I'm an extension educator with the University of Nebraska Extension. How many know what extension is? How many of you worked with extension? Quite a few with 4-H maybe. Well, we are 400 strong across the state. A lot of us have different responsibilities. I work in the area of Community Vitality Initiative. There are 14 of us full-time when we're fully staffed. We're not right now, but when we're fully staffed, there'll be 14 across the state that have embedded into the different regions in which they work directly with the communities. And our objective is to help communities engage their citizens, to plan for the future, to say, you know, this is who we are, this is who we want to be, and how we're going to get there. So we have a lot of different programs that we focus on, that we bring into the community, and wanting to have that diversity, that those multiple voices at the community, because a lot of them that, you know, they've been doing the same old for many years, and not realizing that their community is changing, or that not everybody is at the table and that voice isn't being heard. And so we assume that through our community prosperities framework, that every community is willing to engage their citizenry and willing to plan for the future. Now, is that realistic? No, but we hope that they're more willing to do that now. But we focus around 3 different issues: people, place, and economy. And with the people, we have areas that we work in. We have resident recruitment and retention. So we call it Marketing Hometown America, where we really look at what are the assets that the community has. That is that quality of life piece that we can market as a community to people that are looking, companies that are looking to come to a community and say, hey, I know what you're all about. I know that if we have a workforce coming in, they have these amenities, they have these schools, they have the healthcare centers, whatever it is that you can really focus on. And what we're finding out, most of it is the family, the safety, not necessarily, you know, the mountains and the lakes and everything, which is nice. And but it's really, they're looking for that hometown feel. And we are seeing people between the ages around 30 to 45 coming back to our communities. Through entrepreneurship, we're seeing the younger generation come back too. So that's Marketing Hometown America. We also have, through our health partners with Extension, a program called Healthy Communities. And this is helping the local grocers understand what the community needs towards healthy products, so that we just don't have those quick ready-made items that are on the shelf that have a lot of chemicals in them, but fresh produce, fresh meats, and then bringing along the community side by side with them, saying, you provide this, we'll buy it. And so having that cross commitment, because we see a lot of grocery stores that are either deteriorating or they're closing, and that we're having these food deserts across the state as well in some places. So how can we mitigate that? And we have another program that works on some of the communities that are collaboratively buying the grocery store and offering it as a cooperative or multi-ownership to get that back and open up, so that they don't have a food desert in that location, especially if you are disabled or older and you can't get someplace to get the food that you need. Those are vital pieces of the community. We also have early childhood programs that provide training for parents and for childcare providers that is online. So you as a librarian can bring those individuals into the library and have parent discussions, have the training free of charge right there, or we have staff across the state that can help provide that. Last year we had over 6,500 adults went through the program, affecting 78,000 children. And so this is a well-recognized program that is actually done in partnership with a lot of other departments within the state as well. Career planning for high school students. We have individuals that are doing training for high school students in the classroom, outside of the classroom. Last year we had over 10,000 students go through the program, trying to figure out what is the next step of education for them. As to place, we know that people that are talented are very mobile, and that they choose where they want to live. And so we're wanting them to live in our rural communities and enhance that quality of life. So we have a couple of programs that are available. And these are programs that if you want to bring that to your community, you just contact us. And we'll be there to present and say, hey, this is a program that maybe your community is interested in, bringing the partners together. But it would be great to have the library system available to help us. One, we have to do research, we have to do surveys, we have to get the people together. One community where we just did, last year, it's called the Entrepreneurial Communities Activation Project. And we call it ECAP for short. But we held all the sessions at the library, and that was in Plainview. And as a result of that, we had a lot of individuals that came to the library that had community discussions and put together some action plans, working around housing, working around their events, working around business development and what they can do, and have subsequent trainings at the library for their businesses. So that meeting space is very important as we engage the communities and look forward to putting together those action plans and moving forward with that. And obviously, we've been very heavy in the disaster education and recovery. We have staff that are very focused on that right now. Our dean has pulled away responsibilities from individuals that are in this area to really focus on that. But the question is, where do we go after the recovery? And what is the long-term aspects that we can do? So having that planning, that discussion, working with the other entities in the state, saying, okay, let's just not do the immediate stuff. Let's look to the future and see where we want to go with that. And then on economy, we have a lot of evolving programs, especially we work with a lot of partners in this area as well. Youth entrepreneurship, working with the libraries with the Makerspace project. And what we do is we have an entrepreneurship team that then provides education to the youth to say, okay, you can make these things, but what are you going to do with it? Let's look at how this could be a potential business for you. And just 2 weeks ago, there was a training held in Beatrice, at the Beatrice Library. And we try to bring a lot of that technology in. I was an advisor, I was a remote advisor. And so I was either sitting on my phone or I was at my desk responding to student questions that were in Beatrice. And looking at, what is it that you're doing? We use the Stanford design theory and empathy theory with that, to say, okay, if you're gonna make a product, it's just not for your use. If you want to make a business, it has to be something that's catered towards your customer and understanding what your customers need. And so we want these kids, middle school kids, high grade school kids, through this process to understand that if you really want to go into the business, you can't just sell to your mom and dad and friends and aunts and uncles. So anyway, some of the ideas that were coming out of this, there was a young lady that wanted to create a business focused on children that are in the hospital and create a game or a puzzle for children to have something to do that reminds them of home as well, so they don't get some homesick if they have to be there for a long time. So she was creating a puzzle, and so she was emailing me back and forth, and she says, well, can I have a picture? I'm going, what do you want a picture for? And so so she wanted to have a personalized puzzle, and so this is what she did. It's so cool. So I sent her a picture of my dog, and I'll pass this around, but and if it comes apart, you're gonna have to put it together yourself. But it's a picture of my dog, and that is a laser cutter. Is that right? Yeah. Right, okay. So that she created, and it is so cool, and it's texturized too. So if you feel the top of it, the colors, the deeper the colors are, the further it goes into the wood. And so she, they had a fair, and then they showed people their products, and so she had orders after result of that. And so they were working with her, the team that was on location, working with her, what is your price points? How much are you gonna sell? So she did the research and said, okay, this is how much they're selling online. And she says, but I can't charge $40 for that. So she said, I'll just go halvesies. And she's charging $20 for that and making them for her friends right now, and parents, and trying to come up with some different ideas. So her model was tested and revised according to interest. But what kind of experience this little girl has made, and understanding just how to start those businesses and some of the basic questions and things that you have to think about. So that's one piece that we have. We also have, as part of our youth entrepreneurship, we have Adventure Day, where we bring in middle school students either into the school or we've gone to other locations and just bring in individuals from the community to say, serve as mentors to them, to serve as business coaches, judges. And so that's another opportunity to get involved with the youth and participate in entrepreneurial growth. One thing that we do have coming on board is intelligent communities. We're doing this with Stanford University, and this is helping the community say, what do we have for technology? Not just broadband, but is it, do we have the entrepreneurship education pieces? Do we have the innovation pieces? Do we have the maker spaces in our communities? What is going to push us forward to create that quality of life issue and to allow for economic growth into the future, and really put together a 18-month plan of how we're going to address this as a community. And then we have everything from customer service training, frontline employee training. There's nothing worse than having someone come into a community and say, where is the library? And the person at the gas station has no clue. So how do we train those individuals to understand their important role in the community? Because tourism is a moneymaker. It's the third largest industry in the state of Nebraska. And that they have that important role in their community, and to try to get those dollars to stay in that community and to sell their community, because they are the first person that they may touch as they're driving through. So those basically, we have a lot more. There is a handout also, the fact sheet. On the back is not the most current listing of all the different programs that we offer. There's a lot of youth, and we have a new program called Regional Food Systems. Let's see, leadership training, just a lot. So I guess the question, look at Extension as a partner. We have, the same mission of education, the how-tos, increasing or enhancing the quality of life, getting citizens involved, letting them know that, their community, not let them know, let them kind of reappreciate their community and the assets that they have and how they can capitalize that to help mitigate some of the rural decline of population. And with your help, we can work together to hopefully change that needle to a positive versus a negative.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm Joanne McManus, and I work for the Nebraska Library Commission. And what I've been doing there for the last couple of years is working on the Library Innovation Studio project. We did get a over $500,000 grant from IMLS, the Federal Library Agency, to do rotating maker spaces in rural and small communities in Nebraska. And I had some handouts. The one with the logo on the top is basically a 2-page summary of that particular grant program. Of course, I left you a bookmark. Librarians have to have bookmarks, right? But that has our website, so when you want to look for more information about that particular project, you can find all of our equipment on there. And then, because we were going to be talking about community and economic development today, I kind of just pulled out some passages from our original grant application to talk to you a little bit about how IMLS, the Institute for Museum and Library Services, really does see a role for libraries working on community and economic development. And primarily that's why we got that particular grant. But basically, in a nutshell, we have put together 4 makerspaces, and makerspaces are made up of equipment and devices that you can make things with. So we have laser cutters. Our particular laser cutter is currently in, one of them is in Beatrice, and that's what made that puzzle. We have CNC routers, vinyl cutters, heat presses, and printers, so we can make t-shirts and mouse pads and things like that. We have embroidery sewing machines, robotics kits, music audio kits, camera green screens, all kinds of equipment that we can make stuff. We have selected, it's a 3-year project, we've already selected 31 libraries and communities of 25,000 and less. And you can see the list of communities on that particular, on that one chart. Today we have Jennifer from Neely here. We have Norfolk represented. I think Verdigris is here. Sorry, they didn't show up. I saw the list. But anyhow, those libraries have all had our makerspace. I know Jennifer, I think you were at our at the fair last year, and I think you could have sold some things.
Probably did.
Because they had a lot of things they made with the laser cutter and other equipment that was drawing quite the crowd. But what we're doing really with this project is showing communities, not only just the libraries, but the communities, what a makerspace can do in their community. Certainly people are learning skills, they're learning design software, because if you're using that laser cutter or that vinyl cutter or some of those other machines, you're actually getting into CorelDRAW or other design software and you're designing something. You're creating things, you're doing things with the camera and green screen. And so not only is it building skills for people who come in and use the equipment, but people are getting ideas for businesses, entrepreneurs are budding. It's really kind of amazing. Now, libraries don't always have enough space for makerspaces. And as our libraries who've participated know, we bring out a lot of stuff. We have tried to work with, and if you look at the list, you can see some, we have communities less than 1,000 on this list. Not everybody has a lot of space. We've also worked with mini and micro studios, where basically what we do is we take the complement of equipment and we split it up into 2 or 3 pieces. And then, so maybe you only have half of the equipment at any one time. And then 10 weeks later, we pick it up and we bring you the other half of the equipment. But I do want to talk a little bit about how this particular thing, other than, you can obviously see maybe new businesses might set up entrepreneurs are thinking about what they can make. So that's an obvious connection to economic development. But when we first applied with IMLS for this rotating makerspace grant, they turned us down. They said makerspaces are not new in libraries. And we said, well, in rural communities, we are not seeing makerspaces. And so, we talked to them, we approached it from a whole different angle. And the angle that we did is we weren't writing a grant anymore about we want to do makerspaces and rotate them. What we wrote about was how we can help rural communities to be community anchors that serve as catalysts for economic and community development, because that's what IMLS wanted to do. And so it isn't so our approach wasn't, let's get makerspaces in libraries, but let's help library directors and staff work with Nebraska Extension and their Chamber of Commerce and their Economic Development Corporation and leaders in their community and really be that community catalyst. And so that's what IMLS was interested in. And now we do it with a makerspace. But really, you really can see that the Federal Library Agency is really interested in libraries serving as hubs for things that you can do in your communities and working with everybody. I did want to mention before we break and do some more conversations, this is a 3-year project. You see that 31 communities have selected, so you go, well, I'm not on the list, I forgot to apply, or didn't apply. But we did get a call from Iowa last week. They asked if we wanted to do a 4th year. We said, yeah, because of course it came with extra money. So we have reapplied. I need to get them even more information. So we have no idea if they are going to give us funding for a 4th year. But in our application that we already submitted, we did put in that we would be interested in serving up to 3 communities over 25,000. Right now, we said only communities less than 25,000 because when they first turned us down, and then we had to go back and talk them into it, we really said that makerspaces aren't happening in rural communities. So that's why we then the second time limited ourselves. But this time we're asking for just work with up to 3 communities over 25,000. That's only 6 communities in our state, but Fremont's happy. And so we'll see what they say. So we have no idea if they're going to say yay or nay to our whole proposal, whether we'll get new money. But stay tuned. Give me a call back in a couple months if you're interested. At first, we thought it was going to be, and it is a competitive process, how we select our libraries, but quite frankly, we had 3 application cycles, and the last 2 cycles was not too competitive because we really didn't have that many who applied. So don't think that you're not going to get in because the community down the road is going to have more space or more staff because we really didn't have too many people apply. Too many libraries applied the last 2 times. So don't let that stop you. The other thing that I think stopped people is we don't have the room. A lot of times you don't have to have that meeting room that you can turn into a makerspace because that piece of equipment can sit over there between those shelves, and that piece of equipment, we can squeeze that in over there, and that piece of equipment, we can put that in that back room. And so we can work with you. We hook off a Wi-Fi, so as long as you have good Wi-Fi, we don't have to have all those computers hardwired in. And originally we said you needed a window open because we have a laser cutter, but we thought that ain't gonna work. And so we purchased a BOFA filtration system, so you no longer need to do that. So it really is, I think communities are able to do it. But it's a lot of work. What do you think, Jennifer? Is it a lot of work?
It's a lot of work, but I think that it is a huge and awesome opportunity to bring that type of technology to a community that otherwise would never see that kind of thing. If you can get your community on board and to participate, it's a wonderful opportunity. So I encourage anyone, like you said, even if you think you're too small, give it a shot because you can make it work.
Yeah, and we had been in and out of 16 libraries. Well, I say 16 because only 16 answered my survey, so we're going with the number 16. There's 17 now. But you know, obviously our goal was that some of this equipment would be purchased and put in either the library or somewhere else in the community. Of those first 16 libraries, 10 have either purchased or are fundraising to get a laser cutter, which is the most expensive machine. 7 a vinyl cutters and a heat presses is also at 7 already. 6 3D printers, 6 button makers, 5 embroidery sewing machines, and then there's laminators, robotics, design software, Gamma green screen, and then when you look, we also asked, are there other organizations in the community that purchased or are purchasing things for public use or student use? We had another 6 communities that either their school or their chamber or somebody else bought machines. And then, of course, I've surveyed our libraries 3 times now. In the first survey, one library said, no, they have no plans to raise money for a maker space. And this time when I surveyed them, they said, well, somebody bought us a laser cutter, so we're in business. So the community, you really see the community support. And of course, I don't know why they initially said they have no plans. Probably budget. You only have so much money, so much time. But we are seeing that it really is working. I'm not going to take up any more time. We can start having that conversation, Eric.
Well, and that's what I wanted to, we have 4 people here as resources. They come from 3, 4 different backgrounds. Questions that you might have in terms of in your situation, ideas, comments?
Well, I have a question about the 7 habits for highly effective teams. We're one of our goals is to do a lot more team programming than what we currently do. Now, if I just contact our extension in Madison County, they can arrange for us to schedule that.
Yep, there is a team that focuses on youth leadership, and so they would put you in touch with that individual, and I actually probably have, they don't have contact information on here. But yeah, or else you contact me and I got a business card and then we can get you in touch with the right
Okay,
person too,
all right.
so.
Thank you.
We were down at Blair, I think, last year, and Blair has a new library and has it's a room and it has all kinds of stuff. Is that makerspace?
That's a makerspace, yeah. I have not been there, but yes, I heard Blair has makerspace.
That's pretty cool. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, because I've never seen it, so.
For libraries that have done it themselves and they didn't get to go through a grant process, or they got their own money and made their own place, I was able to take a tour with actually GFDC to Columbus to look at their new high school. So they don't have, their community college doesn't have a trade school aspect to it. So the high school partnered with all the organizations in town, all the businesses, and they built basically a trade school in their high school. And they have laser cutters and they have CNC machines, and it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen if you ever get to go down there and tour. But the kids are all being prepared for trade school to finish very quickly after high school and get jobs. And that's kind of what Nebraska needs right now. But they just went over to BD and said, this is what we want to do, get on board. And BD's like, here's a check. And then, so then they started with the big companies, and then they got a list from the chamber, and they contacted every single business in town. And the number of people who got on board to support that, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars were raised to build this new school and this new part of the high school, and they built the new high school. And it's the most amazing thing I've ever seen. So just call people.
I think you'd be surprised, because businesses are looking, they want to make those partnerships. They need people with those kinds of skills, and so I think they're very open to that.
We want to keep our young people here if we can.
Exactly. And I think some of your resource partners may have a sense of who some of those businesses are that are looking to develop talent in your communities. And so feel free to reach out to us, because we may have a lead for you. I can't promise money, but
You know, and a lot of other things that we're hearing from the manufacturers is they're looking for employees that have skills, but also looking for employees that have soft skills. Helping students do resumes, you know, knowing how to fill out timesheets and things, you know, that they're not being taught in the schools anymore. We do that through extension, but definitely can't reach all the youth. But those soft skills are very much needed because they're kind of going by the wayside. So that's another area that if you want to bring someone into the library that can teach that, you know, professionals in the community. And this is what the expectations are if you want to do, you have a summer job with us, so we can employ the youth. So just understanding what the responsibilities are for holding those jobs. Their first time or subsequent jobs are coming back into the workforce where they haven't been for a while. Those are vital skills that we need also.
Well, and playing off that, actually a training that you offer, or even like Allie on her presentation before was talking about how she's developed her volunteer program with students. And I'm thinking about the valuable skills that those students are learning just from her mentorship, and those employment skills that employers are just clamoring for people that have those. So I know it takes some time to develop that volunteer program. It takes time to get volunteers and get them going, but I think about that as a resource and what kind of development you're making in those folks that you're working with too.
Yeah, and reach out to the different partners or resource providers, because a lot of our services are free. And so we're looking for avenues in which to deploy in programming as well. So, reach out to your local extension office, your DED field staff, colleagues that are doing it in other places and stuff. One thing that we also have is a handout that Lindsay and I worked on, just brainstorming really quickly. Different things that you could, using the little chart that quick planning chart that Lindsay put together and shared with you, pick one or two of these and say, this is something that we can employ in our community really quick, kind of down and dirty, just to get the exposure out into the community and what the library can do around community economic development. And we just happen to have 50 ways. We kind of maybe added some in there to get to 50, but a little touchy there. But a lot of different simple ideas, some of them a little bit more comprehensive, but play with that a little bit.
One thing that they don't have listed that I would recommend for you folks, we've started doing recently, is we're hosting job fairs in the library. So if you haven't heard of a company called Costco or Lincoln Premium Poultry, they're hiring everybody. So everybody from CEOs to, they hired a firm to come handle their cleanup. So it's called PSSI, and they needed a place just to come park themselves and be available for both English and Spanish speaking individuals. So I've been to the library for 2.5 weeks now. They just use our little East building, and they sit in there all day and just wait for people to come in. And they're hiring just for the cleanup crew for the Lincoln Premium Poultry. And then we also partner with Costco to do hiring for their other pieces. And then the Chamber of Commerce came up with an idea for a drive-through job fair. And because our library has a nice little drive-through, they drive through and they just sat out on our front porch and handed out job applications and what do you need? And it was just a drive-through job fair. So just very unique, fun. I loved it. Thought it was great.
We actually, with the group that we were working down in Southeast Nebraska, started that down there. And the reason that the employers, manufacturers said, we don't want to poach from each other anymore. Nor do the employees want to know that their current employer, that they're looking for another job. So it's incognito job application process. And so they can either have a spouse run through and pick up the packet. They can do it themselves, and no one's going to know that necessarily they're looking for another place of employment and they're jumping from job to job. And so the manufacturers got together and told us that they wanted something like that too. So I'm glad to see it's catching on. But those are simple things that you can partner with the Department of Labor, the chamber. Yeah, free.
You can do anything.
I was going to say, Jim, you want to talk a little bit about your FEMA situation?
Skylar was pretty heavily affected by the flooding this summer, or this spring. And when they deployed the FEMA teams, they needed a rally point for their daily meetings. So with our new facility, we have 4 different size community rooms that are available. And we just, signed them up, gave them a key to our community room, and every day they were having their meetings there, and then they would go out into the community and make assessments and talk to community members that were affected by the floods. And then also we had resources there so that our community members could apply for FEMA assistance. And sometimes I would just, they're sitting in that room right now. How about if I just go introduce you to them? And then the FEMA
the FEMA team member would be able to sit down right there and help them through the application process. So it was very helpful, I think.
One of the other things, I guess, I was just talking with Krista, and I'll let her, don't take her thunder, but one of the ways we all know, April is having a major event for the country. And Krista?
The census is what he's talking about, coming up. Yeah, the people from the US Census Bureau, the local organizers of it, which is actually out of Denver for us, contacted the Library Commission for us to try and help them get the word out about the census and what's going on. And they want to work with libraries to promote it and push it. We're going to have at some point an Encompass live show, working with them about it. We're still working on a date for that. There is a chance that they have certain people that they have talked to, contracted with, who are like celebrity type people to help push it. And if anyone knows Nebraska football, Johnny Rogers is involved in this. And if we're lucky, he'll be on my show. I don't know about physically here, but or remotely, but in some way. So he's a former hunter, and they've gotten him on tap for that. So there's going to be more info coming about that. I think we've been blogging a little bit about it. Mary Sowers, the government resources librarian, the library commission. So they're really going to be wanting pushing things specifically to have libraries be a place where people can go to do the census. All going to be online. That's the thing. Yeah.
The key thing here that I want to talk about is, you know, it's not just business organizations, but the influence that you have in terms of your local government things, making it known to your boards and groups that you have, if you have space for meetings and you have resources. One of the things that I talked with a number of libraries about is communicating with your local government organizations, cities, counties, to provide not necessarily archive activities, but having them provide documents, budget documents, grant documents, those things like that. If you think about this, you know, most of those offices are only open 8 to 5. You've got people coming in through their offices that may want to look at this stuff. Some of them don't want to go down there and look at it, but it takes up time and space within their offices. If they making the offer to those organizations that you've got space, you've got shelf space, you've got places where people can come after 5, you know, or wherever, to look at those documents. Karen, don't you do something like that with Norfolk Prison? Maybe I've got the wrong library in here. Do you?
What specifically are you?
Well, the government, like their city government budgets and planning documents and things like that. Do you provide a space for that kind of?
We make them available to the public.
Right, right. So they're that. I know in Grand Island they do that. So the argument is, not the argument, but the sort of the statement is if you want to see how your city government is spending money, go to the library because the city proposed budget is there for you to look at. You know, you don't necessarily have staff to answer questions, but at least they can look at it and see.
Just like taxes, we have this stuff there, but we're not taxing.
That's right.
I will say everything that we've partnered with, all the people that we've gone out and contacted and worked with, it all came off of one question: how do we get more people in our door? Everything that we've done has been based off of that, and we broke 100,000 this year on our door count. And then both door counters broke, and now I don't know who. But y'all know those cost $30,000 a piece. So, but we asked that question, and everything that we do is based off of that.
And since we're talking right now, this panel associated on economic development in regards to the census, they do it because you were talking about jobs. They have jobs available for people in Nebraska. So look on the census website that they want people to, all from the manager people down to going and knocking on doors and making sure people know to fill out the stuff. So that's something else, but we actually have some flyers that we put up on the window of the library commission, yeah, that they just have jobs, I think it says 2020/jobs or something is the URL. But they have, and they've got job openings right now in Nebraska for people to start getting up to speed on that. So if, that's something else that can be pushed, so.
They came to Fremont, they gave us the flyers.
Yeah.
So they're looking for people in the Fremont area. They're at $15 an hour for the bottom position and $19 an hour minimum starting wage for the next higher position that keeps track of all those door knockers. So we have flyers hanging in the library for it.
Gotta get your numbers in there so we get all the right money to the state. Big key too.
Something we've been working with toward thinking about the census for the future. If you are not aware, individuals of the Spanish persuasion in Fremont are afraid of everybody and everything, and the flood kind of showed that as well. We are trying to create a safe space and an environment for the Spanish population to come in. We hired a bilingual librarian. She goes out to their churches and their activities and groups and tries to say, hey, this is a safe place, come in here and use us. So we're trying to open up that door so that she can also start talking about the census coming up. Because if they're legal and can be counted on the census, we want them to be. But there's a lot of fear right now. So we're trying to offset that fear.
To be clear, just I guess clarification for anyone who wants to fill this in. It is unconstitutional for them to ask if you are a legal citizen on the citizenship form, correct? So like if someone says, I don't want to take it for whatever reasons regarding that or something similar, they're still like, we're not going to say like, oh, we can track you down or whatever. Like that is not on the form, correct?
Right.
Like correct? Okay, I did really want to clarify that because there was a big thing with that just a little while ago.
Right.
I want to count everything.
There is not a citizenship question on that.
The Supreme Court said no, you can't do
Right,
that.
okay.
Yeah. Certain people may still talk about wanting to, certainly not, but it's back then from pushing that particular thing, yeah.
Okay. So now that I can reassure my Latinx population that the citizenship question is not on the survey, I don't have the resources for a bilingual librarian. Do you have any suggestions on the course I can take to?
Call all the other businesses in your town and ask who has a bilingual person. So our Three Rivers Health System has a bilingual individual that helped out the flood. She answered FEMA questions because we just needed people who could translate, not just speak, but could translate Spanish accurately. And she was a certified translator. There's a difference between being able to just change the language for you or to read a document from the government and make sure that you're accurately reading that document. So she can do both. And so we just found her and the city started using her for the flood stuff.
Okay.
You know, and we talked about volunteers. I mean, here's another opportunity for you to link with some organizations within the community in terms of volunteer processes. So I mean, you got that option too. Any other questions?
If anybody's looking to grow their teen service area, bring them in and let them translate. So most of our families that come in, the little 8-year-old comes up and translates everything for us anyways. So bring them in and let them get comfortable in the library and become volunteers. And they can help pick out your books and they can help you translate your documents so that the families can have them.
Anything else? Well, we're a little bit early, but I don't want to drag out anymore. We've got some time. They're setting up for lunch for those that are going to stay. Yeah, Tammy.
I have a question for Joanne. Will it ever come the time if the grant is renewed, where super small libraries could get 1 or 2 items? Because you said you could fit it in a corner. Well, I don't have any corners. I could have room for maybe one thing, maybe.
Well, right now we're doing what we call micro studios in Plainview, Verdigris, and Laurel. And of course, Plainview has plenty of space, but their concern was, staff learning all of the machines all at once. And so we would be up for doing another set of micro studios, but then you're having 1/3 of the equipment. So like right now, but some of this is in a tote and then it's in the back room until somebody wants to use it. So for instance, the camera equipment and the music audio equipment, that fits in a tote. You don't pull it out unless somebody wants to use that particular piece of equipment. I don't think we'll probably do one machine at a time.
How do we sign up for that?
We will, if we have another application period, I always send out an email to all public accredited libraries. And this time I didn't write the word accredited in our application. I didn't ask Rod what he thought of that, but I thought, just in case we didn't have, I couldn't get enough. But I didn't put the word accredited in my application to IMLS, but I haven't talked to Rod. But if you're not an accredited library, then you might have not gotten the email, because right now, what we've been doing is just
The original grant rate was specific to just
Right.
libraries who had been accredited. Right. But that's not something that was handed down to us from IMLS, that was just our
Right,
choice.
right.
So if necessary, that can be
Right.
not.
But not everybody
Amended.
opens every single email they get. So it might be that you got the email 3 times, and I send it at more than once every time. But maybe you didn't even open my 6 emails over the course of the last 2 years.
Do you, when you get this, do you keep it for that period of time, months?
20
Like
weeks,
that?
20 weeks,
And you
almost.
can't like have it in there for a week or so or something like that? No? It's not like that?
No.
Okay.
First of all, the local community provides the local trainers. So we come in and we train local trainers. So library staff, extension educators, volunteers in the community. So we'll train you on how to use the equipment, but then you in turn have to train people who want to come in and learn how to use that laser cutter. So it is a time commitment. And I don't know in your library, Jennifer, what your ratio was between local trainers that were actually your staff versus others. It's a
really
different
dependent, I think,
mix.
on your community. We had a lot of interest at the beginning, and then I had a lot of no-shows for people who said that, oh yeah, we'll be involved, we'd like to train, blah, blah, blah. And then it really ultimately came down to 1 or 2 community member volunteers, and the rest was staff. We ran into the issue, and I don't know how many other communities found this. We had a lot of people with the expectation that they'd have a project and expect the librarians to do their stuff. And trying to get it through people's heads that no, we don't have time to do your project, nor do we want to. So that was the one issue that we really faced. I just had somebody call just a few months ago saying, I heard that your library does custom engraving. Yeah, you never did, but that was the expectation, and how that word on the street got twisted into that, I
Like
don't
the game,
know.
the old game of gossip, I used to.
Yeah, I really don't know.
Well, we saw those laser engraved jars somewhere and they serve at the library.
Yeah, so,
Well, there's your new business model.
revenue source. But anyway, yeah, I think it just is really dependent on your community and how much community support and how much engagement and active engagement you can get from your community members.
You'll be surprised if you just ask.
Yeah, and we did find that there were a lot of libraries that, there were kind of some super users that, they got trained by the library staff on how to use that laser cutter, and now they are in there all the time using that laser cutter, and so now they're kind of teaching people how to do it too. But we didn't see that in every library, but there were some libraries that, that there was a good mix of volunteers that really liked that embroidery machine, so they didn't mind teaching it to others.
I'm curious, age of what you were seeing, and those of you that had it, and just experienced, like, age of people, users. Like, I have an 8-year-old that I can see, like, looking at this going, and obviously she would need help, but,
Right,
I mean, that's her tool, that's her wheelhouse,
right.
so.
We had, an age, I'm trying to remember what age it was, because everybody that wanted to use the equipment had to take a class and get certified to use it. And I think for kids, they had to have an adult with them. But the range of ages of the adults kind of, I really thought we'd have a lot more late teen, 20-somethings. And not that we didn't, we did have a lot of those, but I was just amazed at the people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, even in their 80s who just came in and used it all the time. It was really fun to see.
Well, but Norfolk has a unique situation because they're middle school, junior high, I think 7th, 8th graders, whatever that is. They actually got a grant the same time we did from Newport Detailing Center, and so we have all of that in the school. So that teenage range really is already being hit pretty hard. But like I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they could do all of the equipment with a couple like the laser adult supervision, but they could do all that designing. And that's, I think what that grant was for, was to show that kids can create early.
And the other thing that the Nebraska Library Commission offers, and Krista runs that program, is our Internship Project. And if you're a library innovation studio library, it's pretty automatic that if you want an intern.
It's an automatic thing, you don't, you will give you an intern, paid intern will give you $1,000 to pay someone to be another staff person for your innovation studios related equipment and events and things. So every library who's participating is just automatically offered, and there's no like application form or, convince me that you want it, just is it, do you want one? Yes, okay, here. It's automatically in the budget as however many libraries we have the money set aside for each one to have an intern.
And not everybody got the intern, but a lot of them that did get the interns, they were some of the major trainers. I mean,
If I could add to that, we were fortunate enough and that you allowed us a repeat intern. So the intern that we had the previous summer, whom we've already trained on all the other, circulation and everything else, she was allowed to come back and intern during our Innovation Studios time, and she was a huge asset. A teen who was not afraid of technology whatsoever. So, so if you have an intern and you're thinking about doing the Innovation Studio, pair it up because it works tremendously.
And you're right, those youth, they're not scared of that.
No, I'm afraid at all. Fearless.
And it is interesting because a lot of people who wanted to do the woodworking or something, they wanted to come in and use those machines, and then they go, oh, I need to know computers and software programs to run that thing. I want to go get my bandsaw. So it does bring a whole bunch of new skills that, the average woodworker might not exactly have.
Well, it's new. We don't let these people go. Those that have been with us all morning, we thank you for being here. I hope the morning activities were worthwhile for you. We enjoyed having you here. Dave, thank you for your neat technologies that you've got set up. Those that are continuing with us over lunch and the annual meeting, and you all are welcome to stay. I think there's probably enough out there for you all. Anyway, so we'll take a kind of a shift here. We'll turn off some things, turn some other things on, clear the desk, allow you to see what else you need to do. Can we eat in here? We are going to eat in here. Just step out there, pick up plates of stuff, and bring back in here. We'd love to have you. So, thank you very much.
I have to go get Where are the crawdads? Are you thinking about